When we talk about the functions that are occurring in our body, we quite regularly refer to the cell types that are carrying out those functions. But cells in the human body don't work on their own. They work together as a collection, and when we get a collection of cells together, we form the tissues. So our tissues are a collection of similar functioning cells in combination with their surrounding materials. So the example on the screen is epithelial tissue. So we have these individual cells, if you can see where the cursor is pointing to. We have individual epithelial cells that are working together to perform the function of that epithelial tissue, which in this case is from the kidney and would have a function in, say, for example, absorption or secretion. There are 4 types of tissue in the body. We have epithelial tissue, connective tissue, nervous tissue, and muscle tissue. So our organs generally contain all 4 types of tissues. We generally don't have, our organs don't have just one tissue type, they've got all of them. So what is it that these tissue types do? Well, very broadly, very generally, nervous tissue is involved in communication within the body and sending messages, electrical messages. So we find a lot of nervous tissue in the brain and the spinal cord, which is where we get a lot of conduction of information throughout the body. We have muscle tissue that's involved in movement, so you're producing movement with muscle tissue, whether it be skeletal muscle tissue involved in moving your arms and your legs, or it might be that you're referring to cardiac muscle tissue, which is found in the heart, or smooth muscle tissue, which is found lining your organs and blood vessels. We also have epithelial tissue, which generally covers and lines our body cavities and is involved in functions like absorption and secretion. And finally, we have connective tissue, which supports our body, it protects our body, and it binds structures together. So that's an overview, a very, very general overview of what those 4 tissue types do, but it is much more complicated than that, or I should say they have a lot more functions than that. So we do have all 4 of these tissue types in our organs. So for example, in the lungs we have epithelial tissue, which is involved in the gas exchange, so we're able to exchange the gases when we're breathing in and out. We've got muscle tissues that allow the lungs to expand to allow the air in. The connective tissue that will underline things like the alveoli, which is the structure that will take or where the site of gas exchange occurs, and also nervous tissue that will innervate, which means that it's directing what the lungs are doing. So are the lungs expanding? So all 4 tissue types involved there. The arrangement of the tissues in the organs themselves as well will determine the overall function of that organ. So if you have, for example, if we look at a blood vessel, and we'll look at these in more detail as we move through the semester and through the year, but if you take, for example, a blood vessel, we have muscle tissue, smooth muscle tissue in the middle of a blood vessel that's directing movement, but then inside the blood vessel we have epithelial tissue that's allowing the smooth passage of blood through there. So we're going to go through the different types of tissue. We're going to have a look at the properties of all of these 4 types and the functions that they carry out. And understanding what these tissues do and how they work is going to be really instrumental and really helpful in allowing you to understand how all the systems work, because we will continually refer to these tissue types within the body and what they're doing in the organ systems.